What's up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast. It is day one of the NFL free agency legal tampering period, which means we have a lot to talk about. Two big reported additions to the Buffalo Bills. We'll get into those. One player is departing. We'll talk about a couple of moves that have happened around the division, around the league. Ryan Talbot, how are you, my friend? I don't know if we heard you there, buddy. Are you muted? Do we got Ryan? Yep, you were on mute. Now go again. No, you're all like I don't know, something's going on there. Try a different setting. You broke your audio, Ryan Talbot. Okay, so his
Oh,
audio.
here we go. Someone turned my mic off. I never turned my mic off.
All right.
I have
Derek
no idea.
Babcock, first live show in forever. Let's get it. We are going to get to it, and the microphones are working now. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing good. As I said, for those that couldn't hear me, much more active day for the Bills in the first day of the legal tampering period than I was anticipating.
Well, it's funny because, like, if you start to do the math about what happened in the lead up to today, you really can kind of put together quite a bit of space the Bills have opened up to do some work. The Josh Allen extension, we don't have the numbers on that, what the first year cap hit is, how much cap space was created. But, this could be something where it opens up 20 million, up to 20 million in cap space. We just don't know the number yet. So you have that piece of this. You have the Greg Rousseau piece that reportedly, according to the numbers, opened up about $8 million in cap space. You have the Von Miller release that opens up about $8 million in cap space. So now you're talking about maybe having between 20 and $30 million to work with to open up the free agent period. And they get it started in a big way with the 3-year, $36 million contract for Joshua Palmer, former Los Angeles Chargers wide receiver, and a very polarizing player, judging by the conversation that's been happening on social media since the announcement of the deal. The one thing that is clear, Ryan, and I put this out to our insider text line, this is a player at a position where the Bills strategically put an emphasis on a guy that finds separation on the boundary. If you go look at all of their wide receivers last year, even after acquiring Amari Cooper, they ranked amongst the worst teams in the league at combined separation yards per route run in the wide receiver room. So what they're doing is they're going and getting a guy in Josh Palmer, albeit on a smaller sample size. The stats don't blow you away. From the advanced analytics metrics, he has the ability to get open, which I think is going to be something that they're going to be looking at not only for this edition, but maybe something that they do in the draft in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and what's interesting is he signed for the same amount as Darius Slayton did by re-signing with the Giants. 3 years, $36 million. Slayton was a very popular name among Bills fans. Had a little bit more, household value maybe in terms of the namesake itself, but it's clear the Bills were targeting Joshua Palmer, and you look at the analytics, you look at the stats, and there's a lot to like about his game from the separation standpoint of it, the route running standpoint. He creates separation with his route running. He is not a burner. He's not a 4.2, 4.3 guy. I think he ran a 4.51 at the combine a few years ago. He's a very interesting player, Matt. He came out of Tennessee when he was with the Volunteers. The quarterback play was very inconsistent, and his stock rose that year, 2021, I believe, at the Senior Bowl. Route running was on display. There's some tape up there on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, of him just, beating some guys badly, guys falling over, trying to cover him. He looked the part, and I think that was a big play in why the Chargers grabbed him in the third round of that draft. Had a nice second season, and then after that, he's been hovering a little close to 600 yards, but in like the high 500s the last 2 years. I think in Buffalo, he can get unlocked for a few reasons. One, more opportunities. You look at some of the wide receiver rooms that were in Los Angeles the last few years. And two, he's had a little bit of a merry-go-round at offensive coordinator. And yeah, that will continue, obviously, by joining the Bills in Joe Brady's system. But 3 offensive coordinators in 4 years.
Yeah, that's definitely an important piece to bring up. I mean, his best statistical season, you have to go back to 2022. I think an important piece when judging his season last year is the Chargers were going, you mentioned the offensive coordinators. They were going through a little bit of an identity change under John Harbaugh. They wanted to run the ball more. They bring in J.K. Dobbins. They have a couple, Gus Edwards, and I think they had one more back in the stable there that his name is eluding me right now. But they really put an emphasis on getting their run game going. So in that scenario, you have a guy in Palmer where they're, really handing over the keys of that offense to Ladd McConkey, dominant in terms of the target share, dominant in terms of his production. I mean, I went back and looked at Ladd McConkey's numbers. They were tremendous. And Palmer found a way at times to impact the game with big time clutch plays. And that to me is kind of something that the Bills were missing at the receiver position outside of their slot receiver in Khalil Shakir. At times, you got it from, Keon Coleman, a handful of moments over the course of the season. Mac Hollins was the most clutch player that they had performance of the year in the playoff game. If not for him, who
Yeah.
knows what that one looks like? They lose Mac Hollins to the Patriots. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. To me, this was, hitting a specific need and bringing in a guy at a number where I think at first glance, the number kind of scares you because you don't think of Josh Palmer as a big time target in free agency. You look at his market value chart on Spot Track and it comes in at a 3-year deal for 12 million. And now you're looking at 3 years and 36 million and your eyes are bugging out. I think you're paying for what this could be. You're also paying for, top dollar. Devontae Adams goes out and gets a little bit over 20 million per season. You're getting Palmer at half of that. And the salary cap is only going up. So you're hoping that this could add to what you want to do. And also, the guaranteed money is not crazy. At $18 million, this is something that you're committing to him for probably 2 seasons, kind of a lot like the Curtis Samuel deal. And again, they're trying different flavors of players. I'm still not giving up on Curtis Samuel. I know a lot of people are out on him. We could talk about him on a later show. But I think Palmer is a dart throw to try to figure out how can you unlock or make it harder for defenses to play against this passing game.
Right. You mentioned Devontae Adams. Adams is still going to command 100 plus targets. He's going to want to be a number 1 receiver. Palmer's going to be happy with whatever the workload is. It's another one of those everyone eats, selfless personality type players. Fits the X receiver role, 6'1", a little over 200 pounds. As I already mentioned, excellent route runner to create separation, can help you move some pieces around on offense a little bit, put players in different roles at times. He fits from the perspective of what they want to do. I'm sure Joe Brady probably sat down and had a big say in free agency and who's a receiver you want to target to add to this room. I've seen comments in here that are upset that they went with a big name or a big, priced wide receiver before doing anything on defense. But that wide receiver room needed another wide receiver, and they'll probably have to draft one as well and just add some more competition to it. This was needed, especially after losing Matt Collins and Amari Cooper being in free agency. They're down a few players right now, and Palmer's going to play a big role in this offense in 2025.
Yeah, and I think the people that want money spent on defense, that's a good place to be. But I also think when you look at some of the positions in this draft and where the Bills are drafting, they're likely going to get value at some of the positions that you saw really break the bank today. I mean, you
Yeah.
see some of these defensive tackles that are getting paid a ton of money on their 3rd, 4th contract. The Grady Jarrett's of the world. Milton Williams was obviously a hot name coming off of that performance in the Super Bowl. But don't forget, he earned that contract, as did Josh Sweat, playing with, in the same defensive line as Jalen Carter, which I think, should be baked into the pursuit of a player like that. I don't know if that big time money for some of these guys, that there's a reason they're going to free agency. There's a reason that I think the Eagles feel that they can replicate what those guys gave them by going and hitting it again in the draft. And to me, the Bills have to hit on the draft. And there's a bunch of different ways that you have to do it. We're going to get to the defensive side of the ball. But final thought on Palmer here. I think separation was something that we spent so much time talking about last year, and Keon Coleman's lack of it. And we thought that Curtis Samuel was going to be the guy that can maybe unlock things on the outside, and maybe they find a way for him to be a little bit more integrated. He can stay healthy. But to me, what stood out about Palmer more than anything was the physicality that he plays with at his size, the fact that he's not blowing by you and beating you with deep speed, maybe opening up the opportunity to really address the speed downfield threat in the draft.
Yeah, and just one more thing on Palmer. We've seen a lot of times in man coverage the way that the Bills have struggled to get open. That's going to be his bread and butter. That's going to be an asset for this offense.
Some news here. Chase Young, I know some people had him tabbed as potential target for the Bills. He is staying with the New Orleans Saints on a 3-year deal. So there's that. Some live updates as we go here.
When you can stay with a premier franchise like the Saints, you got to do it.
You do got to do it. I mean, come on, let's be honest. Chase Young's career has been just an absolute mess.
Disappointment. Yeah.
Why not just stay there? 3 years, $51 million. I'm not sure he was getting that anywhere else. So the Saints ponied up. Nobody spends money like the New Orleans Saints. All right. If you want to take your Bills coverage to the next level, sign up to become Shout Buffalo Bills Insider right now. 716-527-6727 gives you a 2-week free trial. It is $3.99 a month. After that, you get all of free agency here for free, and then we'll charge you a cup of coffee every month to be a part of this thing. Let's move over to the defensive line, Ryan. The Bills, they're getting creative with the addition of Michael Hoecht. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, Hoyt. I looked it up.
All right. So funny little side note. Scott brings it up, and I think a couple other people brought this up in the comments. 2 Canadians, Josh Palmer and Hoyt. Okay.
The Mountie.
Right.
Remember the Mountie?
From the WWF?
Yes. You remember those posters? I'm going to go off tangent here for a minute. Remember those posters in the early 90s, the great, like, Bill, they did it for every team, but the Bills ones, like, they had the Safari, they had Kelly's Heroes. And all that
I
stuff.
do remember that one.
You get Palmer and Hoyt dressed as Mounties, horseback, drinking Tim Hortons coffee. Instant bestseller poster.
Wow. That is going to be trending on X. If X is working, we'll see.
Yeah.
If we get through the day without that thing crashing, it's going to be quite an achievement. David, Matt, make it stop. We don't ever want it to stop. The party never stops here on Shout with Ryan Talbot. All right, so Hoyt is a very interesting addition. So at first glance, 3 for 24. The guarantee money is not going to be close to that. Is the guarantee money out? I didn't even see. Actually,
not that I've seen yet.
Okay, so I'm sure that this ends up being a 1 or 2 year commitment. But what Hoyt really is, you're probably going to start as an edge rusher, but this is a guy that potential to move around quite a bit. I was reading a story from Jordan Rodriguez at The Athletic. Hoyt was somebody that the Rams last year, which, by the way, if you want to talk about a defensive line and a defense overall, what they did last year on the heels of Aaron Donald's retirement, rebuilding that thing from the ground up, how quickly they found pieces. We talked about Kobe Turner on this show, their defensive tackle, who, we kind of highlighted when the Bills played them last season. Hoyt was a guy that we didn't spend a lot of time talking about, but somebody that had a really huge impact on that defense and what they did. And what ended up happening is they can line him out on the edge. They can line him up at linebacker. He can drop into coverage. He can blitz on third downs. I saw one blitz package where they sent him on an absolute, I think it was a cover 0 blitz up the middle where he absolutely destroyed the center on a great move. There's another clip of him that's got passed around a little bit where he makes an inside move and just absolute quickness and get off and speed. Derek Babcock, one of our most informed Bills fans, the Dewan Smoot replacement. The key thing that I read in Jordan's piece, he calls the defense on plays on third down, which is exactly what they had Smoot doing here. He's a more athletic, younger version of Smoot, which I think he has a little bit more juice as a pass rusher. I think this is a really good addition, and I don't think you even close the door on maybe bringing back Smoot as well and having him be on a 1-year deal if he doesn't have a market out there. Have him come to camp and compete for a job. But I think they have some big time plans for what they can do with Hoyt.
Yeah, Hoyt's a super freak. I said that right in the headline of my post on X. He's a guy that you can, you already mentioned it. He can play off the edge. He can play at defensive tackle, coverage at linebacker. He can drop back, like you said. There's so much that he can do, and it's funny. You were out and you said, "Can you get the edge rusher?" And I'm like, "Edge rusher." I saw him listed as a defensive tackle, and then like the next I saw three insider posts. One had him as a linebacker, one had him as a D tackle, one had him as a DN. So it does just show you the versatility, the jack of all trade type of player that he can be for this defense. And you have to wonder if Ryan Nielsen picked this guy as someone like I can mold him. He has that track record of working with defensive linemen. This is a player that maybe he thinks he can really develop and take to another level here in Buffalo.
Thank you so much for watching here on this Monday night, start of free agency. The tampering period is underway. We'll bring you any breaking news that happens while we're going live. And obviously, anything that happens after we're done on the show, we'll come back with tomorrow, of course. David asks, is Von Miller is gone, right? At this point, even for reduced salary, has that ship sailed? I wouldn't say it's definitely sailed, but I don't expect him to be back. We'll see. I think sometimes it's just better to do a clean break. And I don't know if the number is going to be right. And now you have Hoyt in this role. You have Rousseau, Javon Solomon, AJ Epinesa. You figure there's probably going to be an edge in the draft, maybe even another edge on this, whether it be over the next couple of days or in that second wave. I don't expect Miller to be back. What do you think?
No, it'd be a surprise. I think if he goes out there and he finds that there is no market for him, then maybe that's what brings him back. They can work on a lower number, but I could see him going back to Denver. There's a few spots where I could see him landing as a situational pass rusher. It's just Buffalo, that ship has sailed. It really didn't work out in the end. Injuries obviously played a big role in that.
Najee Harris is on his way to the Los Angeles Chargers. So just as we set up the fact that that is a team that really has leaned into the run game, they're going to pay some money for Najee Harris to be their bell cow out there in LA. Mark Bouchard, one of our insiders, with the super chat, do you think Bean has a big aggressive move in the works, or will he save it for the draft? What do you think, Ryan?
I think he'll save it for the draft personally, but I guess my answer would also be never say never. There was an Albert Breer piece earlier today on SI that said the Bills had called Cleveland about Myles Garrett, and he thought that they might even have made a run at T. Higgins had he not been franchised by the Bengals. So he doesn't just throw names out there for no reason. If he thinks that's the case, I'm sure there was some kind of speculation to it. And if the Bills are going to go after big fish like that, maybe Brandon Beane is lurking. He's looking at a name that no one's thinking of in terms of trading for or acquiring. We've seen some silly money get thrown out there today for some players. So I'm not sure it'd be via free agency. I still think it would be in a trade. What about you?
Yeah, I think that you got to be careful about some of the money that's getting thrown around. To your point, DK Metcalf getting 33 million. Like, listen, on a team like the Bills where the quarterback's in place, I think you can make the argument, but I'd still even push back at that number for that player. He's a really good player, but I don't think we're making the argument that DK Metcalf is even in the top 8 when we're talking about the elite wide receivers in the game. And I think that's the only kind of money. When you decide to pay a guy money like that, you better believe he's got to be one of the elite guys at his position. What did Sean McDermott say a couple weeks ago? You have to have 2 to 3 guys on each side of the ball that are top 3 players at their position. I don't think DK Metcalf falls into that category. I do think Trey Hendrickson falls into that category, and I think that's why I'd be more open to the Bills making a huge move like that to go get him. The latest report out of Cincinnati is the price tag is going up if you want to try to acquire Hendrickson. It's a funny situation because they really can't pay all those guys. And if they've decided and determined they're going to pay Higgins, they're going to pay Jamar Chase, I don't know how the money is there still to then turn around and pay Hendrickson too. I wonder if the curveball might be if it's Higgins that ends up getting dealt instead of Hendrickson, because there's been a lot of pushback on Cincinnati investing all of their assets on the offensive side of the ball when you have a premier pass rusher in Hendrickson on the roster right now. So is that something that you think you'd be open to the Bills looking into is maybe a deal for T. Higgins, even after going out and paying Josh Palmer?
I would never say I'm against it because of the caliber player that Higgins is. I just think there's going to be other teams with draft capital that might beat what the Bills can offer and have more room to give him a monster contract. Not if the Bills were to acquire him, they would obviously be trying to sign him to or they would be signing him to an extension, but it's tough. I like Higgins's game a lot. I do think of him as like a 1B to Chase's 1A. But there's still a big gap between that 1A, 1B. So I'd be a little hesitant about it. The Bills do need to try to find a player like that. And it's tough to do in the draft when you're always picking very late in the first round.
Couple questions about Amari Cooper, and we'll switch gears back to the offensive side of the ball. The Bills go and add Palmer. Last note on Higgins. I wouldn't do the Higgins deal because I'd almost implore Bean, if I'm Terry Pagula, to go and find that player in the draft to try to get it on a cost control over the next 4 years, right? Like you could pay for that skill set, but I also think you could probably take a swing. There's a couple of guys in that range that their names are escaping me. One of them's name's Jalen, I think, something or other. What was the kid's name? I'm gonna bring up the top receivers. Who are some of your second round targets for wide receiver?
Royals. Jalen
Royals is one.
Yep, that was
The
the one
other
that I
one
really
might
liked.
be Higgins, actually. Am I way off with that?
No, you might not be. I'm blanking right now. I've Royals has been one of my favorite prospects in this draft
Jaden
class.
Higgins out of Iowa State, 6'4", 215. To me, that might be a similar maybe build to Higgins. I don't know if their games are exactly similar. As a matter of fact, I'll bring up Higgins' draft profile and see who our good friend Lance Zierlein compares him to. What do you think?
Oh, I'm not 100% sure who will compare him to, so I'll be interested to hear this.
Jaden Higgins' draft profile. Did he run the 40? Internet is lagging, Ryan. I don't like it. 4.47 40. No player comp yet. Top 3 strengths: big-bodied wideout with a wingspan over 6'7", purposeful drive phase, disguises comebacks and stops, runs routes with smooth strides and good balance, effective use of size to physically separate at break. So, the top 4 things that you see on that are pretty exciting. And if that's a guy that's in range with some of those second round picks that the Bills have, I'd much rather them go that route than go out and give up draft capital and then have to pay Higgins. And, Higgins isn't always the healthiest guy either. So more on that as we move our way to the draft.
I did just real quick, though, find a comparison for Jaden Higgins from the 33rd team. And Kyle Krabs. He actually was really good over at the Draft Network. Who do you think he compared him to? Any guesses? I'll give you a hint. Former Lions receiver.
Calvin Johnson?
No, my gosh, no. Kenny Galladay.
Ooh, that's a hard pass. That's a hard pass. But stylistically, what you'd be signing up for early Galladay, I think you'd probably be excited about. But whatever happened, injuries, whatever, went off the rails a little bit. Okay, Mac Hollins to New England. Man, talk about a knife through the heart of Bills Mafia. Fan favorite, now going to arguably the team's biggest rival, who I think is, the rivalry is going to get kicked up a notch this year, because I think the Patriots are the second best team in the AFC East as we sit here today with a young quarterback in Drake May, who I think you're excited about. Justin Fields today, he goes to the New York Jets, and then obviously still Tua Tagovailoa, who's going to be pushed in training camp potentially by former number 2 overall pick Zach Wilson, who is now the backup quarterback in Miami. Just fire quarterback moves in the AFC East.
I don't remember which NFL insider expert put it out there, but when the Zach Wilson deal was announced, someone's like, I wouldn't just ignore this move. Something along the lines of, I wouldn't ignore this move based on what people in Denver were telling me about Zach Wilson at the end of the year. If they liked Zach Wilson that much, they would have tried to re-sign him to be the backup quarterback. Let's get real now here. Let's not act like they let this great quarterback go. We've seen enough of Zach Wilson to know that he can make some plays here and there, but that is a very inconsistent game completely. Justin Fields, that's big money for a quarterback that, again, has flashes but has never put it all together. And like you said, I think New England is in the driver's seat to be that number 2 team in the division.
Yeah, I think Hollins, it would be. I understand why a lot of Bills fans wanted the Bills to bring him back even after the Palmer deal, because you think about it, it's a 4 wide receiver room right now with Palmer, Shakir, Coleman, and Samuel. And I don't think you're going into next season with Samuel written in pen after a disappointing first season. So if you say, okay, you got 3 other guys there, possibly 4 if you want to add Samuel, and I think you kind of have to because of the money. Even a post June 1st cut, it doesn't really give you much. They're sunk in for a second year with Samuel. So it's another receiver. You add Mac Hollins, and you know what he already was in this offense, and I think that immediately makes it challenging to find a role for a rookie wide receiver, which I think the Bills should want to try to do, whatever that ends up looking like. I had Jack Besh in my mock draft we talked about last Friday. That's a skill set that isn't currently in this offense. I know that Keon Coleman, there's some similarities, but they're different in a lot of ways too. So I think there's still opportunity for them to go out, find another flavor of wide receiver. And the special teams conversation is interesting. Didn't it feel like in the back half of the season, Joe Andreessen really stepped up into a leadership role on that unit? And I think that maybe you're not as in need of his leadership, Hollins, as much in that department, with some of these other guys maybe expected to take a step next season. And one of the best special teams coordinators in the NFL, if you listen to some people, in Chris Tabor.
Right. And, John here in the comments mentions maybe Tyrell Shavers getting a chance to contribute on special teams. He really worked on that a lot last year and going into training camp, knowing that was going to play a big role on him potentially making the team. Obviously, it didn't happen for him this past year, but it could. He could be that bottom of the roster wide receiver that hangs on because of the special teams ability. But Mac Hollins himself came in here 1 year, kind of an unheralded signing when it took place. There are a lot of media people that said, you're going to love this guy, but that's one thing. But then he comes in here. It's not just the personality. He became a leader in the locker room. He became a leader on the field. You saw him take on a bigger role than maybe expected as a pass catcher. 5 touchdowns, a career high for him there. Second best season in terms of receptions and receiving yards. Was great in that role. Was a willing downfield blocker in the run game. Excellent there. And 100 special team snaps, about 22% of the special team snaps for the team last season. So did a little bit of everything. He is, and I saw it in the comments here, I don't remember who said it, glue guy. He is great, and he's going to be really, really good for a Drake May and a Patriots team that is trying to take that next step and get back into contention for a playoff spot. You want players like that, especially when you're trying to ascend to that role. I love the signing for the Patriots. Obviously, if you're a Bills fan, you hate it because he was so fun to watch. He was so fun to cover. But the Patriots had a lot more money to work with, and they gave him a nice contract that can be up to $10 plus million if he hits his incentives.
What's the move? Two quick segments before we get out of here. We'll come back tomorrow, obviously, with anything that we miss tonight or early tomorrow morning. What's the move that's like stuck out to you, whether it be in the AFC East, whether it be in, just the day in general, like an overarching, like made you kind of lift your eyebrows a little bit on the first day of the tampering period?
Well, I mean, I like Milton Williams' game a lot, but I couldn't believe how much the Patriots gave him in that deal. That was crazy money to me. I don't know if he can ever reach that status of play. I don't know that's like that was mind blowing when I saw it. And I don't know if he was visiting Carolina, but he was linked to Carolina. He was linked to a few other teams. And then the Patriots just must have upped the offer, and which blew him away, rightfully so. So that's it. And that's the one thing I'll say though, as much as I like the Patriots, and I think that they're going to end up being the second place team in the division this year. When you have this kind of money to throw around, a lot of the times these contracts do not make it the course of the terms, because they find out very quickly that the silly money that they threw out, the player just can't play at that caliber level.
For me, the one that kind of was a wow kind of move, first and foremost, Sam Darnold. Like, that offensive line in Seattle is bad. I mean, some of the clips that were sent out in the last couple of months of Geno Smith's season last year and the pockets breaking down, I can't imagine Sam Darnold is set up for success there. They gave him the 3-year, $100 million contract, the Baker Mayfield special, if you will. And listen, I mean, he's coming off of a really good season. They go out and they trade. Um, um, DK Metcalf. They go out and they trade. They're moving on from Tyler Lockett. They trade. Who was the other one? Metcalf, Geno. They traded Lockett. They
Mhm.
move on from. So that offense is going to look completely different. Jackson Smith and Jigba is a former first round pick who they're building this thing around. But the problem is you're going to have to put big bodies in front of Sam Darnold. And I just don't know if in one offseason they're going to be able to do that. How about Laramie Tunsil
Yeah,
traded to the Washington Commanders?
I saw that
There,
in here. That's a good move. That was a surprise move.
there have been some real impressive moves by some teams with some young quarterbacks to build up front. I think what the Chicago Bears have done, I don't
Just
know
going to
much
mention that they're
I
going
don't know
nuts.
much about the kid that they got from the Rams, Jackson, but I do
Right.
know going out and get Joe Tooney, spending and getting the top center and Drew Dahlman on free agency when the tampering period opened. That those are important moves. I put out on Blue Sky today, like that's something that Miami Dolphins never did for Tua Tagovailoa, and they've paid the price over it over the course of the last couple seasons.
100%. And you know what? That this O line talk just reminded me. The Chiefs, Jalen Moore,
Oof,
two
oof.
year, 30 million for a reserve, kind of a swing tackle guy to this point. You're asking him to come in and take on a huge role. There's a lot of risk there. I said it at the time of the Joe Tooney trade. I understood it, the age, the salary cap. Uh, but man, they're playing with fire. That line wasn't great last year, and now they're once again they're rolling the dice, so to speak.
Last segment here. What's out there still that you think that's got your antennas up? I know you sent out a couple of players on the insider text line.
Mhm.
There's a cornerback that's still sitting out there with a tie to the Bills, if you will.
Yeah, Jonathan Jones. I still like him for a veteran stopgap for the Bills at cornerback. He's played in the slot early in his career, but he's been a boundary corner the last few seasons in New England. The Not last year, but the 3 years before that, he was excellent, both in the slot and on the outside. 60-some% passer rating allowed. Last year was a rough year, but he was coming off of shoulder surgery. He was injured, but he does have ties to Buffalo's new nickel cornerbacks coach, so I could see that happening. Jonathan Jones also told Josina Anderson at the start of the tampering period that he's okay with a return to New England, but they addressed the cornerback position, Carlton Davis, today. But he would also prefer to stay out on the East Coast if possible. Well, that would appeal to the Bills potentially there, and I don't think he would break the bank.
Um, one name on the interior that I think is interesting. I haven't done a lot of work on his season last year, but I just know every time he's played the Bills over the last couple of years, he's really been a problem. That's Sheldon Rankins in the interior as a run defender, somebody that can give you a little bit of juice as a pass rusher. You're not going to want to break the bank for a defensive tackle at this stage of free agency, and obviously the Bills are probably going to go to defensive tackles in the draft, whichever way they decide, or at least I think they should. But that's a name that I kind of see out there. Malik Collins, somebody that's expected to get released by the San Francisco 49ers. That could be an interesting name as well. Is there a defensive tackle out there that you think the Bills could maybe consider going after?
Just real quick, Rankins did go back to Houston on a 1-year deal worth $7 million. He
Oh,
had ties though too to Buffalo's D line coach, so I thought that he might have been in play there a little bit too. But no, not Rankins. I'm thinking someone else. But Rankins did go back to Houston.
did that just happen?
Yesterday. No, it happened a little bit earlier today.
Oh, I
When I think
got.
it might have happened right before the legal tampering window opened or close to it. But I get that. Pittsburgh. They just released a D tackle. He would be on my radar for Buffalo. Blanking on the last name, Larry.
And Joby or something like that.
Yes, thank you. So
Okay.
he's someone on the radar now. If you're looking for another 3 tech, I like Calais Campbell, still playing at a high level, rotational piece. Despite his age, was still elite there. I'm not sure how many great 1 techs you're going to be getting right now. You might have to go the Kenneth Grant route or another 330 plus pound player in the draft and one of those early picks, which I'm okay with as well, getting them out there, throwing them out into the fire, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Derek Nadi is out there, the former Chiefs player. Jerry Tillery, more probably 3 tech than one, like the typical 1 tech. But I think, last year we did not expect Austin Johnson at all. Didn't have the impact that I think that the Bills were probably hoping for. But I think probably get a curveball at that spot. And this is the draft that you go and you go heavy, pun intended, I guess, at defensive tackle.
Yeah, 100% address it that way. Like you said, they do have to start hitting on some of those draft picks and getting them on those cost control deals for 4, and then obviously first round pick with the 5th-year option, 5-year deals, especially when you have a lot of big extensions out there already on the books and some others that could come still.
All right, that's going to do it for day 1, the legal tampering period in the book. We will come back tomorrow if the Bills do anything. I think we're scheduled to speak with Josh Allen about his new contract on Wednesday. And obviously, we'll bring you any breaking news. Subscribe on YouTube. That's the best place to be, because if we're going live, I might have special guests during the week. You never know when we're going to have a show. Hit that like button for the episode, subscribe to the channel, and then hit that little alarm bell. So every single time we go live, you get a notification so you can join us and join into the conversation. Final word, Ryan.
Yeah, final word. Consider joining the Shout text line. We've had a few new followers this week. We'll continue giving the news and information out there first. $3.99 a month after a 2-week free trial.
All right, that'll do it. See you all tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.